Hello. In this segment, I want to discuss abortion through the lens of what I call ontological grammar and incommensurability. I'm Bry Willis. I recently published an essay titled Grammatical Failure: Why Liberal Epistemology Cannot Diagnose Indoctrination. This video extends that argument into a more public-facing case. A colleague suggested that deep disagreements can always be resolved through dialogue and compromise. That suggestion is not naive. It emerges from a very specific intellectual inheritance, the Enlightenment belief that rational agents, given enough clarity and goodwill, can converge. My work questions this assumption. Let's define a few terms. Ontology concerns what is taken to be real, not in the abstract metaphysical sense, but in the lived sense, what counts as a thing, a fact, a person, a harm. Grammar, in this context, is not about verbs and nouns. It is the rule structure that determines what can appear as meaningful within a worldview. It governs what counts as evidence, what counts as harm, what counts as a person. Commensurability means two positions can be measured against shared standards. Incommensurability means there is no shared metric. You can't measure flour in decibels. You can't measure volume in hectares. These are not disagreements, they're category errors. Now consider abortion. For simplicity, let's model two ontological grammars. Ont A, life begins at conception. The embryo is already a person. The primary moral object is the unborn life. Ont B, bodily autonomy is fundamental. Personhood develops gradually. The primary moral object is the autonomy of the pregnant individual. Notice something important. These are not just different moral preferences. They are different grammatical starting points. In Ont A, abortion is grammatically typed as killing, murder, in fact. In Ont B, abortion is grammatically typed as healthcare or self-determination. This disagreement is not downstream, it's upstream. Language cannot resolve this because language presupposes shared grammar. Debate assumes shared objects, but here the object itself is differently constituted. When Ont A says murder, they are not exaggerating. Within their grammar, that is the correct description. When Ont B says control over my body, they are not deflecting. Within their grammar, that is the correct description. This is what I mean by incommensurability. The Enlightenment Promise says, clarify terms, appeal to reason, compromise. But if the grammar differs, there is no neutral tribunal of reason standing above both frameworks. This is not a counsel of despair, it's a diagnostic claim. If you misidentify grammatical divergence as stubbornness, bias, or ignorance, you'll propose remedies that cannot work. That is the core of the agreement. If two ontological grammars are incommensurable, what happens next? One of three things. First, temporary coexistence. Each side tolerates the other side within a shared political container. Second, negotiated truce, a legal compromise that satisfies neither fully but prevents escalation. Third, closure. One grammar becomes law. And this is where Michel Foucault becomes useful. Foucault's concept of biopower, most clearly articulated in The History of Sexuality, Volume 1, published in 1976, describes the way modern states regulate life itself. Not just territory, not just crime, but bodies, reproduction, health, fertility, mortality. When abortion law shifts at the federal level, when access is withdrawn, this is not merely policy change. It is a grammatical elevation. One ontology is being codified. The state declares this is what counts as life, this is what counts as harm, this is what counts as legitimate medical action. What was previously a contested grammatical field becomes legally legible. And once law crystallizes a grammar, discourse is no longer neutral. Civil disagreement continues only because the prevailing power allows it. This is the part many people prefer not to see. Note that at least one of the ontologies is left unsatisfied, perhaps both for different reasons. This is not a compromise, it's fiat. We speak of civil discourse as though it floats above power. It doesn't. It's permitted, structured, and bounded by power. That's Foucault. Now bring in Bernard Williams, and his notion of thick concepts is discussed in his 1987 book, Ethics and the Limits of Philosophy. Words like murder, care, life, choice, dignity, these are not thin, detachable labels. They are thick. They bundle description and evaluation together. You can't strip them down to neutral data and rebuild agreement from there. They already carry a grammar inside them. When Aunt A says murder, they are not merely adding an emotional flourish, they are operating within a thick moral category. When Aunt B says healthcare, the same applies. These words do not survive translation intact. They break on contact. Now add Pierre Bourdieu. Bourdieu's concept of habitus, developed most explicitly in Outline of a Theory of Practice, published in 1972, describes durable dispositions sedimented through socialization. Habitus is embodied grammar. You do not wake up one morning and revise your habitus through reflection. It forms through repetition, environment, institutions, class, and family, which means when someone says, why can't people just think it through? They are imagining that robust agency, authorship level revision of grammar is readily available. It simply isn't. It's a well-preserved myth of modernity. What is available is thin agency, choosing within the space already rendered intelligible by one's habitus. So when abortion becomes illegal in a jurisdiction, it is not merely that one side won the argument. It is that one grammar achieved institutional dominance. That dominance then shapes future habitus formation. Children grow up in a world where certain categories are no longer available as live options. This is how grammar hardens. Now we arrive at Karl Popper. Popper's paradox of tolerance says that unlimited tolerance can destroy itself if it tolerates the intolerant. But here's the uncomfortable extension. Every grammar believes that the other is intolerable. Aunt A believes Aunt B licenses killing. Aunt B believes Aunt A licenses forced bodily subordination. Each sees itself as defending the vulnerable. Each sees the other as morally catastrophic. So when tolerance collapses, it is not because dialogue failed at the surface, it's because grammar's reached a power threshold. And this is why the request for an architecture of cognitive compromise is so interesting. Compromise is not grammar revision. It is usually one of three things: mutual exhaustion, temporary power balance, or strategic silence. True grammar transcendence, stepping outside one's framework and adopting another, is rare, slow, and almost never achieved through debate alone. It happens through lived displacement, institutional reconfiguration, generational turnover, or catastrophic rupture, which is a far less comforting story than Enlightenment optimism, but it is descriptively stronger. If you have any examples or counterexamples, share them in the comments section. I'll be using prostitution and antinatalism as other examples presently. Euthanasia might be another. In any case, that's all the time we've got. If you found this content worthwhile and want me to produce more, let me know by liking. I don't post on a fixed schedule, so if you want to be notified when I post, subscribe, press the bell icon if you wish to be notified in the moment, and leave a comment. In fact, if you disagree, dislike this post and tell me why. Should I rather present as an AI goat? I did that once. It was fun. It's not really an option. I'm still trying to figure out what works. Until then, you're welcome aboard this train. Let's hope it doesn't derail. Find more information on the Philosophics blog, where I tend to post daily. I post regularly on X, Blue Sky, and Mastodon, typically to announce a post on the blog or on YouTube. I also post on TikTok, but YouTube is my primary video outlet. Lastly, I post on Spotify and other podcast outlets, although these are usually AI summaries by Notebook LM. Occasionally, I speak myself. Well, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the ride, or at least took in a new perspective. Cheers.